This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
In the evolution of life, a strong mind will often defeat a strong body. Those that are willing to get up time after time and become unbreakable truly understand the term "until death do us part." That eternal sleep is the only time to lay down for good. A relentless soul is amongst the most frightening weaponry to the adversary and enemy. The only way to win is in the death of the opponent or your own. There is no way around, there is only the way through. There is no time to blink, and there is no time to rest. A victorious warrior knows that a win will come at a cost. Each day will get more and more difficult, knowing that the only easy day was yesterday. So you go through this incredibly difficult week where you're put through absolute hell. You have this chaos going on. You get through it, and you think, hey, I made it. But then you get rolled again.
Yeah, that was my mistake, was thinking that, hey, I made it. Because I remember thinking, like, oh, hard part's over. And I couldn't have been more wrong. So going into second phase, I woke up the Friday before second phase, and I couldn't turn my head left or right. And that was because of those boats I was telling you about bouncing on my head. It had basically, what the docs told me was that whatever's in between my spine, the discs on my spine was gone, essentially. And I couldn't move my head. And so I ended up getting rolled into my third class, which is class 266. And what happens when you get rolled is you're just kind of in this limbo until the class behind you catches up to you. So I had 7 weeks or less to rehab, train, rest, recover. And as soon as the class got caught up with me, I jumped in with them, and then on we went. So
you didn't at this point, you didn't have to go through Hell Week again?
No. So there's checkpoints, right? So that first roll I had was the Friday before Hell Week, right? That wasn't a checkpoint. I had to start over from the beginning. Once I got through Hell Week, that was a checkpoint. If I would have, if something would have happened, midweek of Hell Week and up until second phase, and where I had to get rolled, then I would just start off there. So if I got rolled the 5th week of Buds, I would be considered a brown shirt, because you wear white t-shirts when you're pre-Hell Week, and then you wear brown t-shirts for the rest of Buds after you get through Hell Week. So,
but isn't that a great analogy for life?
Oh yeah.
Think about that. I mean, I take lessons from everything. I take a lot of lessons from the military in general. And that lesson of everything's a checkpoint. Well, life is a bunch of checkpoints.
Oh yeah.
You make it through high school, checkpoint.
Right.
You make it through your next phase of life where you're trying to figure out your way in this checkpoint.
Right.
And you have these series of checkpoints throughout your life where you make it, where you may get a little progress, but you may have to go back,
right.
But you never have to go beyond that checkpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was, I made it to a good checkpoint, but it was my last roll. I had already had my performance roll. I had already had my medical roll. So now I am out of chances, right? Third strike, you're out. And that's what happened. So class 266, dive phase, right? So second phase of Buds training. I'm going through it. First couple weeks, I mean, you get beat. You start out day 1 of second phase on the grinder, just like you do in first phase. You're doing PT, you're getting wet, you're getting sandy.
Getting that hose in your face and shit.
All of it, full Benny. But now you're starting to learn. Now they're starting to teach you. So they're teaching you all about diving, teaching you about your tanks and your rebreather and all this stuff. And so you do about 2 weeks of learning, a lot of classroom stuff, but you still have to do your runs, do your swims, do your O course, and all the times become faster. So you have a certain time you got to meet in each phase, and it just gets faster and faster, right? So you're dealing with all this. Me, I was dealing with it coming off of 2 first phases, a Hell Week, and an injury, and I'm, still got to perform. And I was passing my swims, I was passing everything. But then the third week, I believe it's the third week of second phase, they have what's called pool week. So
that's where they try to drown you.
So that's the last day of pool week. So it starts out, they don't try to drown you day one. They teach you how to, ditch your gear, put it back on, then you got to do it at night. So everything we do during the day, we do at night. SEALs operate, over cover of darkness or under cover of darkness, right? So start out day one, you're just taking your tanks off and putting them back on underwater. Then you do it at night. Then you do it with a buddy and you share a respirator, and it just slowly ramps up until you get to the last test at the end of the week, which is pool comp. And you get 4 tries at the test. So you get 2 on Friday, and then if you fail those 2, then you get 2 more on Monday. Well, as it turned out, I failed those 2 on Friday, and that was a long weekend. And what I did not do, my mistake was train during that weekend. I just sat in my room and thought about the test and thought about what I had to do. I didn't prepare myself. And they give you the opportunity to prepare yourself by giving you wooden tanks that are they're a mock replica of the Twin 80 tanks that you use for the test, but they're wooden, and they've got a respirator on there, and you've got your life vest. They've got it all for you to train, and you can go out on the grinder, do it during the weekend. I didn't do any of that. I just was thinking about this test,
which might be the worst thing you can do, because
it was the worst thing.
Now the anxiety will get you.
Yeah, I got in my head, and Monday came around, and I flunked it, and they wasted no time, man. I went straight to a board with a couple other guys that failed, and they dropped us from training.
Oh, this thing you wanted your whole life. Now you're dropped. Now you're like, now you got to go back to the fleet.
Yeah.
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 This is, so I always wondered this, and tell me, is there a certain statistic or a certain threshold that these BUDS instructors have to reach? Like, you have to graduate 20. You have to, or can they graduate nobody?
There have been classes where only a couple people have graduated. There might be a class where, see, I can't say this because I don't know, but I know that there have been very small numbers. And to answer your question, in the past few years, I know they've been getting pressure to get guys through. Okay. But back then, the books and the movies hadn't come out yet,
Nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it.
07, Marcus Luttrell is still behind closed doors. He's not out and talking. Yeah,
my dad actually, when I was in boot camp, sent me a newspaper article of Mikey Mansour getting killed. And that was the only like press or whatever that I had heard from SEALs, like in the papers or on TV or anything ever. And
well, when you were in, no, you weren't in when the Operation Red Wings happened. That was 05, I think.
2008.
That was 2008. So you were in.
Or 2006. 2000s. I'm getting my dates mixed up. Bad Frogman. 2000. I know it was June 28th.
So that's a crazy one, because
I think it was 2006.
So that screws with a lot of people's heads.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was back then they didn't have a quota to meet. Right. They didn't care. It was just like, hey, we don't need you. It's like, all right. So my buddies and I, we had to pack up our sea bag and march across the street to, it's called X Division, and it's where all the quitters and drops go. And I'll tell you what, you've never met a harder bunch of dudes than the guys that just quit BUDS. These guys are walking around like they are SEALs, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'm like, I watched you cry and ring the bell.
See, to me, that would seem like a walk of shame.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like it was heartbreaking for me when I got dropped, because like we talked about earlier, like you don't appreciate, what you want until you don't have it, and when you're faced with something that you don't want, now you're like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how bad I wanted that. And so I had my moment where I just, broke down, and then I was like, okay, bitch, now what? You know, it's like, what's next? So I went and I talked to I talked to the guy that cuts orders, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, what's the fastest way back to Buds? He's like, well, we got this 1-year billet where you go to Guantanamo Bay and you can be a prison guard, and then you can put in your orders and come back. It's like, sold. So myself and about 10 other guys all took those orders, and we all shoved down to Guantanamo Bay. And
this is an important part in your life right now.
oh yeah,
This is a huge part in your life. You just went through arguably some of the hardest training on the planet, and you're asking for seconds. You just ate a shit sandwich, and now you want seconds. You got rolled, you got dropped, and you're still ready to go back. And if that doesn't speak to your character, never meeting you in person, only speaking to you on the phone, and if you told me that right there, even if you never got back to Buds, that would be enough for me to be drawn to you. Like, what's it about your character that makes you this way? And I want some of that. So that's I think, the draw to you. You get rolled, you get dropped, you're at the lowest point of your military career, and you want more. Like, no, I'm not done yet. What are you talking about? I'm not done.
I mean, this is all I ever wanted to do, you know? Like, and I'm not even in the game anymore. I mean, I am, but I'm not in the training pipeline to be a SEAL. I'm out in the fleet where a lot of guys get lost in the sauce. Some guys never make it back, you know?
You get comfortable.
Well, some guys get comfortable, but there's guys that wanted to go back that ended up getting orders to another ship or something and ended up not coming back for years later. Like, I was down in Guantanamo Bay for 19 months. They told me 1 year, you know? So I got dropped August 31st, 2007. I didn't get back to Buds until December of 2009.
And you were at Gitmo during a very unpopular time at Gitmo.
Yeah. We had a super cool president in office saying he was going to shut that place down. I'm pretty sure it's still open, though.
Yeah, no, listen, I watch Bad Boys. It seems to be pretty fortified.
I'll tell you what, if I ever go to prison, send me to Guantanamo Bay, because they got treated like better than we did.
Oh yeah.
You know, it was because there were so many eyes on that place that it was like you couldn't fart without somebody knowing about it, you know? And it was, I mean, that place, it sucked so bad, but it was such a motivator to get back. Like, I already wanted to go back, you know, but being there as a prison guard for terrorists that I signed up to capture, kill, you know, and I knew guys who were SEALs were going and rolling these dudes up and sending them to Gitmo, you know. I mean, that was just like a poke in the eye and just like a kick in the ass to get back, because it's like, dude, I should be the one putting you here.
You got sidelined. You were a starter, and you got sidelined, and now you got to watch the game being played from the sidelines.
Dude, it well said. I mean, I will say this about Gitmo is that the group of guys that went down there, we had a pretty good turnaround rate going back. One of the guys, he actually quit, and he went back, and he was one of the few dudes that made it from start to finish all the way through Buds with no rolls going back. And I think out of maybe 15 of us, like 10 of us made it. But what I will say about Gitmo too is that it was a great place to train. Like, I had Olympic-sized pool to swim in. I had plenty of trails to run.
It's pretty similar in climate too, right?
It's hot as shit.
It's hotter.
Yeah.
So it's actually better for you.
Yeah. I mean, I hate the heat, man. I'd rather be cold. Even though Bud's training sucked because of the cold, like, you can always warm yourself up. Like, cooling down's the hard part. And it was hot down there. But I got plenty of training in. I mean, I was going back to Buds, I was in the best shape of my life. Like, even to this day, because I wasn't getting beat. I was just training at my discretion, and at this point, like, I already knew what it took to get through first phase. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is like the hammer. You know, it's where they crush you. So going back to Buds, like, I was faster, stronger than I'd ever been.
You're like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. That's exactly what you are.
That's probably the best compliment I've ever got.
You're like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. You just keep getting better and better because you know what's going to happen the next day.
But the thing is like, it wasn't easier. Like, I remember going back and, you know, kind of talking to some of the guys who were at Buds when I showed up who had gotten rolled. And I would like be like, oh, you're a rollback? Like, what's it like? And like, well, who the fuck are you? It's like, well, I'm the guy that got dropped a few years ago. What's it like? He's like, oh, it sucks. I was like, okay. And it did. It was just as bad. It's like, for the most part, it was a whole new cadre. There was one instructor there who was there when I got dropped, and he was still there, and he remembered me.
Oh no.
So like,
oh no.
but he was cool because he was my proctor in my second class in 265, and he was cool. And when he saw me, he was like, it was like day one. He's bitching at the class and drop down, blah blah blah. And he walks by me. He goes, "Welcome back, Collins." And I was like, "Oh, sweet." Like,
Well, you had some pretty storied instructors in Buds.
oh yeah,
yeah.
And these guys, especially those first, yeah, I mean, these guys, they're all coming back from hardcore kinetic deployments, like hot Iraq deployments, hot Afghanistan deployments.
That's sort of their like gift for on these hard deployments, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you listen, you go be an instructor for a little bit and calm down and reacclimate.
Yeah, and most of them didn't want to be instructors. Most of them want to get back in the fight, and I get it. It's like, sometimes you just get burnt out and you got to take a knee and, go be an instructor or whatever. Go.
Well, there was one in particular who I admire the shit out of. I don't know if you want to mention his name or not. Who I love the guy. You told me his name off air, and I won't say it.
Right.
But he's one of those guys who I listen to because I think he's very intelligent, and I think he's very well rounded.
Yeah, Eddie Gallagher.
Eddie Gallagher.
He's the man.
Yeah.
He was one of my instructors going back, and he ended up being my platoon LPO. And I can't say enough great things about that dude. And as an instructor, man, he worked us.
See, I had the fortune of my drill in the police academy was Force Recon Marine. All right, so just like Eddie Gallagher, this guy reminds me a lot of him. Smoke like a chimney, but could still run like a sub 5 minute mile. And I'm looking, stay in the lean and rest for days. Yeah. And these are a rare individual, and that's how I saw Eddie Gallagher. It's that reality.
Dude, Eddie's a unit, man. I saw that guy running around with like a horseshoe of Copenhagen in his mouth, just like barking orders. Like once we were in the SEAL teams, and he was my LPO, just like barking orders at guys, and his teeth are all got like Copenhagen in them, and he's just like, he doesn't give a fuck, man. He was hardcore, and you're right, like that's the kind of guy. I looked at him, I'm like, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Like I tried to memorize like everything he did and just watch him how he moved. But as an instructor, man, he put the screws to us. And
well, he wants you to be as good as he is because you're going to be watching his back. I get it.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, I get why instructors get pissed when they see guys, shitbagging it or shortchanging it, because it's like, yo, I do not want you on my team if you are not pulling your weight. And this is buds, man. Like, you're not even like carrying all this gear or a machine gun or me
or under active fire in a hostile environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is a method to the madness, and that's what buds is designed to do. It's like, this is as close as we can get it without shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
So going back, I classed back up with class 281, and my boys were right. Like, it was just as hard as it ever was, and the instructors were just as mean, and they were just as badass, and the water was just as cold. And that first Hell Week that I went through was with class 281, and I'll never forget Sunday night. They have a evolution called Steel Pier, and we went through, if my memory serves me right, in February of 2010, and the class is out in the bay, and they've got this literal steel pier out in the bay, and they make you strip down to your skivvies, 2:00 in the morning. You're laying on the steel pier, jackhammering. They're spraying you with the hose, and then they make you jump in the water and tread water for however long, 20, 30 minutes, felt like 2 hours. Then they pull you out, make you lay down, and guys are just, that belt is ringing off the hook. And, we lost a lot of guys during that evolution. But going into that, for me, like, I had already done 3 weeks of buds again, and I actually came down with pneumonia, which I did not know at the time. But I couldn't stop coughing. So going into Hell Week, I remember before we went into it, my buddy, he like looked at me, and like I had like my shirt off, and he looked me up and down, and he like looked at me, and almost like with concern, because I had lost so much weight. I was just like just skinny, but like I was just like, this is the hand I'm dealt. It's like, it is what it is. Going into Hell Week, I'm coughing, but I'm performing and I'm doing all right. And we get to Tuesday morning and my body just starts shutting down. And I'm like, what is going on? Like I can't push past this threshold because I keep hitting this wall, and I'm like, something's up. And like my vision's getting blurry, and I'm just kind of seeing Tweety birds. And so I go up to the medical vehicle and I'm like, hey, like something's up. He's like, gives me this look. He's like, all right. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, I keep coughing and I'm, hawking up shit. And he's like, well, hawk a loogie in your hand. So I spit in my hand, and it's just like this clot of blood.
Oh no.
And it's like dark red. So he's like, all right, go to medical. So I go into medical, and they do their tests or whatever, and they're like, you're getting rolled. You've got pneumonia. We're taking you to the hospital. Like, God damn it. So I go to Balboa, and it turns out I have pneumonia and SIPE, which SIPE is swimmer-induced pulmonary edema. And that's basically your lungs are filled up with fluid, and it's from being in the water. And I'm like, oh my God, like another roll, another class. I got to go through first phase again because I didn't hit my checkpoint.
I can't believe you have the fortitude to move forward as far as you did.
So I lied earlier when I said I never thought about quitting. The only time I ever thought about quitting was after that roll. And I wasn't in training. I wasn't getting beat. I wasn't in the surf. I was in my car on like a Saturday morning, like a week or two after I got enrolled. I knew I was going to class back up with the next class that I was ready to class up with, which was class 283. But I'm in my car and I'm driving and I'm going to Imperial Beach to get a coffee and a burrito. I'm wearing my hoodie. I got my flip-flops on, my board shorts, got the heat on because it was cold. I'm driving and I'm thinking, and I'm like, another first phase. This will be my fourth first phase and my third Hell Week. I'm like, this is more than I bargained for, like if you're fortunate, you get one, maybe two rolls, but you don't go through 4 first phases. Definitely not 2-3 Hell Weeks. And I just remember thinking, like, I do not want to do this again. And so I started thinking about options. I'm like, okay, I've been in the Navy about 4 years. I can get out, use my GI Bill, go to school. Or, my dad was a cop. He's probably got some connections in the police department. I could go be a cop. I'm like, well, I hate school and I'm not good with authority. Like I don't want to be a cop. It's like, well, what do I want to do? It's like, I want to be a SEAL. Well, how do you do that? You got to reload. You got to get back out there. And something we talked about on the phone that I've failed to mention before in other podcasts that I've been on is that, and I think this is the key that helped me get through training, or at least it added to my arsenal of never quit, is I heard an instructor say once, and I carry it with me to this day, that training starts as soon as you don't want to do it anymore, right? So if we drop down and we do push-ups, right? You may do 100 push-ups with no problem, but you get to 101 and it starts to hurt. That's when the training starts. And it's different for everybody. Like some people have different thresholds of pain and tolerance or whatever, but as soon as you feel that, like that's when you know the training has started.
I love that philosophy. I teach that to my kids. My kids, I'm very fortunate. My 11-year-old and my 14-year-old come to the gym with me, and they'll do 8 reps of whatever, right? And I said, do you understand that of those 8 reps you did, maybe 1 or 2 of them had any value?
Yeah. And that's real, man. And that's what I remember thinking. It's like, okay, this is where training starts. It's like you did all these other ones, not easily, but you did them, right? And you got through it and you were crushing your evolutions, but now you're at a point where you don't want to do it anymore. It's like, are you going to give up? Are you going to quit? Or are you going to man up?
Then you got to live with that, though.
Yeah, man.
Oof.
And that was the thing. It's like, it was never about like, can I live with myself? It's like, I want to be a SEAL. As much as I, hate failure, it's like I had a goal that I wanted to achieve, and it was by any means necessary, no matter how many tries it took, no matter how much pain I had to endure, no matter how cold I got, no matter how broken I got. It was like, this is all I want to do. And I'm at a point right now where I don't want to do what it takes to get to that point. But it's what else are you going to do? There's no shortcuts. There's no like skipping a level here. It's like
the only way to get there is through. It's not around.
Exactly.
But you also don't want to be one of these guys who quit, who rang the bell, who got dropped. And they have great stories.
Yeah.
They got some great stories, and I'm sure that they use it in bars to pick up women. Hey, I went through buds, and there's some bullshit. That's how it's some bullshit happened, and I wasn't able to finish.
Yeah.
You want to be that guy who I stuck it out. The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherrie Allsup is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherrie on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherrie has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherrie's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherrie will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherrie's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques, uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherrie also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherrie Allsup, go to sherrieallsup.com. That's SherrieAllsup.com.
It's only after, years later, and even just being out of the teams and reflecting on my career, that I'm like, wow, like my story's pretty cool, because how many people do you know have gone through 2.5 hell weeks and 4 first phases? How many people do you know are even SEALs, right? So it's like, it's
out of the thousands of people I know 2.
Yeah, right?
I know 2.
Right.
So that's almost that's worse statistics than the people who go through buds all at once.
I had a buddy who he had almost the exact same career path as I did. He was a little bit ahead of me. So when I first went to buds, he was retreading through buds. So this was his second attempt. And the same thing happened to him. He got dropped for pool comp. He went out to the fleet. He came back and he made it through. And we used to joke. He's like, anybody can go through 1 hell week. It's like, it takes a real man to do 2. It's like, but I'm all about the small percentages, the small percentage of guys that makes it through hell week, that gets dropped after hell week, and then that comes back and does the whole thing and makes it through. Like, that's a very small percentage of guys, So as it was, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I realized that I'm here to do one thing, and I classed back up with 283 and made it through hell week with them. Went on to second phase, and what do you know? Rolled again. Beginning of second phase, just like the last time. So rolled before hell week in my first class, made it through, rolled at the beginning of second phase for injuries, came back, made it through hell week, or got rolled in hell week, made it to second phase, got rolled again. This time it was another medical roll, and this time it was for shin splints. So at this point, before I had said it was 1 performance roll, 1 medical roll. Well, the medical rolls, they can drop you for whatever reason. They don't have to say it's because you failed something. You could just be a complete turd and weighing your boat crew down, and they know it, and you're just failure to perform, you're out. But with the rolls for medical, they're a little bit more lenient, considering.
Your body's going through so much stress.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. So for me, getting rolled in hell week for pneumonia, it's like, okay, this guy's coughing up blood. All right, we'll give him a roll. And then getting to second phase, and Eddie Gallagher took us on a nice slow jog that gave me shin splints up to from my feet to my knees. I couldn't walk. And it was at the end of first phase going into second phase. And yeah, I had, my legs were cracked up. And so,
Thanks, Eddie.
yeah, thanks, buddy. But I mean, it adds to the story, you know. I ended up getting rolled again at the beginning of second phase, and then class back up with 287. That's how long it took me to recover. I mean, I was beat to shit, man. You know, 2 back-to-back first phases in Hell Weeks.
But now you're out of chances.
That's how I looked at it.
You're out. There's no
Yeah.
logical way where they're going to let you if you get rolled again.
Well, even performance. Like, I hadn't had any performance issues up to this point, but I wasn't taking any chances on that. Like, I was not leaving this up to the judges this time, you know? So when I got rolled into 287, I'm like, this is it. And I made it through all the way with 287, but not without more challenges. So going back to pool week, I ended up back on Friday of the 3rd week of pool week, that same test that I got dropped for. I failed the first 2. And in my mind going into them, I think because I had already done everything up until this point. And I'm like, going into it, I'm like, I don't want to give this more attention than what it deserves, right? So I just want to, like, I know my procedures, I know what to do. I'm just going to go in there and do it. And then I fail the first 2 tests, and I'm like, fuck. I'm at the same point I was 3 years ago. And I'm like, there's no way I'm making the same mistake again. And I will say this. When I got dropped and I was talking to my dad on the phone, he said something that like haunted me. And he's like, look, remember how you feel right now, this pain, this sorrow, this grief. He's like, you never want to feel this again. Don't let it happen again.
Dude, so let me interject here for
ahead.
a moment. So when Mike took his life, I said it on an Instagram live, and those people can take a look at it after it happened. I put it out May 10th or May 11th. I said, I'm not going to numb this pain because I was hurting. I was really hurting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to numb this pain. I'm not going to anesthetize this pain. I need to feel this pain because this feeling sucks.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I never feel this way again about anybody that I care about. And it set me on a crusade. And that's how I started the Non-Today movement where, hey, listen, no matter what happens, we're just not going to do this shit today.
Yeah.
But I said the same exact thing. That pain is there for a reason. It's there to teach you
Totally.
not to feel this way again and to do anything you possibly can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Exactly.
That's a great,
Yeah.
Your father's a very wise man.
Yeah. I mean, and I used that. I remembered that, and I used that. And that weekend, instead of sitting in the room thinking about this test, I was like, I got to get to work. So I went out, I got those wooden tanks. I went out to the grinder. They had like a pad you could put on the grinder so you can put your knees on it and do your procedures. And I would fill my mask up with water and hold my breath and do my procedures as many times as I could on a breath hold with like a mask full of water just to simulate being underwater as close as I could get to, you know, like before I thought, you know, what good is this test? I'm not underwater. Like, you know, what's this test going to do? Well, I'll tell you what it did. It secured my mind, and I did 6 hours on the grinder on Saturday and 6 hours on the grinder on Sunday. And I actually ended up breaking up with my girlfriend over it because it was Easter weekend, and she was giving me a hard time about not having dinner with her family on Easter Sunday. I'm like, look, this is not working out. And what's her name? Who cares, right? It was like, this is all that matters, right? So 12 hours of training, Monday morning comes around, and I crushed that test. And what's crazy is the instructor I had for that test, that was his last class because he had been an instructor there for 2 years. And the class I got dropped from, so I got dropped in 266, that was his first class as an instructor. And this was his last class. That's how long it had been since I had been dropped and how long he had been there as an instructor. So I was just, it just came full circle, man. So having him be my instructor for that test and completely blowing it out of the water and just being like, I did it. You know, I put my boot on the head of this demon that has been haunting me for years, and it's on to new frontiers, you know, new territory, unexplored territory. So and I didn't make the same mistake of, oh, I got it, I'm done. So I just took that momentum and I just kept driving, man. I kept my foot on the gas and I didn't let up.
Then you're able to wear that. You finally make it through all the rest of the phases of buds. You're able to put that pin that Trident on. That feeling of pride has to be overwhelming because a lot of, there's been a lot of people who've made it through buds, but there's been very few who have made it through buds as many times as you've gone through it. I'm looking at all the classes: 264, 266, 281, 283, 287,
265 too.
265. So there's another one. I missed one. That is an insane amount of pressure, torture, pain that you put your body through. Suffering. Oh man, you've suffered more than most. But self-induced.
Yeah.
Self-induced.
Sure.
Now all of a sudden you get out and your mind pretty much has to be bulletproof at this point.
I mean, being a new guy, team guy is the best feeling in the world. You're
in this fraternity now.
Yeah, you are part of the brotherhood now. Yeah. I mean, but that doesn't mean that you can just, go beat your chest at the bars and pick up chicks and not work out anymore and whatever. It's like, that's why they say the only easy day is yesterday, and that's the truth. It's like nobody gave two shits about my struggle to make it through buds. Nobody asked, nobody cared, and I didn't volunteer it. It's like, all right, you're here now, get to work. It's like, keep going.
Every Navy SEAL has probably got a suffering story such as yours.
Sure.
And everybody's going to think theirs is harder than the next person,
right.
So you're just one of the few who made it through.
Exactly. And it's like, okay, new guy, get to work, pick that up, put that down, fall in line, shut up, and it's like, but that's what I wanted. That's what I was like my whole thing, my problem with the inclusive, let's bitch about everything and, write a complaint if it's hard is like, dude, we want it to be hard, because when it's hard, like that gives you the edge, that gives you the clout, it gives you
gives you the advantage.
The advantage for sure, because it's like, I did this that not a lot of people do. And I mean, that's why, before SEALs became, the hot topic, it's like everybody wanted to be them. Now everybody with a social media page talks shit about them. It's like, dude, let me see you make it through one day of buds. You want to talk shit about guys that, are SEALs because of something you heard or whatever, like social media gives people the opportunity to weigh in on whatever they want. And it's like, dude, it's that man in the arena mentality. It's like, and to be honest, like, who cares what they say? Who cares what anybody says? It's like, you're the one in there fighting, working, suffering, pushing through. And it's like, that's all that matters. You and your, more importantly, your buddies to the left and right of you, because you're there for them.
So remember this, because somebody told me this. When somebody spews out that hate towards whatever you're doing, a hater is very rarely ever doing better than you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very rarely.
I love that saying.
Yeah, that's the greatest saying in the world. And this is perfect. You get into the teams, and listen, your deployments, that's probably a whole third podcast, which, listen, I want to talk to you about. But you get out, and the one thing I know about Navy SEALs is when you get out of the teams, the mindset that was created during all the training and all the missions and all the deployments never leaves you.
No.
It's something that it's like you got a special gift that not a lot of people get to experience, that you get to use as a life lesson for the rest of your life.
100%. So
how big of an adjustment was it to get out of the teams and try to rejoin normal society?
It's still an adjustment.
Yeah. And how long have you been out?
I got out in 2018.
All right. So you've been out for 6 years.
Yeah.
And what was your first gig when you got out? Did you figure I'm just going to take it easy?
Yeah, so I took about a year off. My wife and I had just gotten married in June of 2018.
And by the way, I want to point out it's a special woman who's willing to endure the mindset that you've created over the past several years.
Yeah, she's definitely a special woman, and she for sure endures, and she puts up with me, and God bless her, because I mean, there's a lot to unpack and a lot to deal with, but we're both working on it, and she's great. And
you never piss off a Navy SEAL's wife, because I guarantee she's tougher than you are.
Oh yeah, she'll slit your throat faster than I will. She's She's legit. And she was one of the reasons that I decided to get out, because I told myself, you know, I'm not going to get married or have kids while I'm active duty, especially in the SEAL teams.
Too much stake in the game at that point.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to be a FaceTime dad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be gone 9 months out of the year for deployments and training and not see my kids grow up or grow apart from my wife or anything like that. You know, I mean, divorce rate in the SEAL teams is insane. You know,
and you also don't want to be that military member who gets that Dear John letter.
Right.
Say, hey, listen, I can't take this shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was like, so I had it all kind of figured out in my head. And by the way, like, I didn't plan on getting out. Like, my mindset, I was going to do 20. I wanted to screen. I wanted to go the distance, you know, especially after everything I'd been through, you know. And by the time I got pinned, I had been in the Navy for 6 years. So it took me 6 years to get through a 1-year pipeline. You know what I'm saying? So I told myself, it took me 6 years to get here. I'm going to give 6 years back to the teams. And that was just kind of like, that was just kind of something I said to myself just to hold myself accountable. But I never even considered getting out after 6. And then as it was, you know, the stars aligned and I ended up getting the same like butterfly feelings in my stomach about getting out that I did when I saw that dude walk by me going into the Army and me remembering that I wanted to join the Navy and be a SEAL. So that's kind of, I took that as a sign and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to walk away from this.
That was your next mountain to climb.
Right.
You know, what happens when you climb a mountain? Well, there's the base of the next mountain. You climb the next mountain. So you climbed that mountain.
Right.
Like you climbed that mountain several times. But you climbed that mountain. Now it's time for the next mountain. What's the next mountain for you? The Suffering Podcast welcomes our newest sponsor, KetaRevive. Ketamine infusions that are personalized, accessible, and holistic. Proven treatments for post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, neuropathic pain, and so much more. KetaRevive is physician-operated with customized treatments tailored to you and an outstanding support system. KetaRevive offers first responder special discounts. So try something new, proven treatments, located in Wyckoff, New Jersey. To find out more, visit KetaRevive at KetaRevive.com. Let's start healing today.
Raising my family, I got 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, 4, 2, and my boy will be 1 in a few weeks. So just being present for my family.
You got some Irish twins in you. I like it. I like it a lot.
Hey, man, I had to make up for lost time. You know?
Yeah, again, you're around a bunch of alpha males with a high-protein diet, so it's nice to have some feminine touch. It becomes addictive.
I didn't quit till I got my boy, though. I'm trying to push my wife into giving him a little brother, but I think she's done. She's like, I'm not a golden retriever. Like, all right. And it's a lot, man. I mean, my wife, she does a lot of the heavy lifting, and you know, I'm fortunate now to where I have a job where I can be at home a lot. I work for the Western Steel Council of Iron Workers. I'm their safety director, and I got that through another team guy buddy of mine, and it's been great. It's I'm really appreciative of the opportunity, and the people I work with are awesome. These iron workers are like the Navy SEALs of the construction world. Like they're hardcore. They're hard dudes doing a hard job, and I get it.
Well, those iron workers, listen, I grew up in Atlantic City, man. I watched iron workers build a casino. These guys are different. I watched guys getting hung over the steel because, you know, we talk about in the beginning, you know, the argument stuff.
Yeah.
I watched it, you know.
Yeah, man. So that's what I'm doing now as my day job, but I'm still working. So one of the jobs I got, the last job I had before this job, I was there for 4.5 years. I was a combat skills instructor for Navy EOD technicians. So I didn't really stray too far from the watering hole. Like I took like a year off when I got out and was just like, all right, I'm just going to, you know, chill, regroup, you know, get close with my wife or, you know, newlyweds, start having babies. And then, you know, I went back to the gun and I've been rocking that thing for the past 4.5 years, more than I ever did in the teams. Like I knew how to shoot in the teams. Like you got to be a competent shooter, you know, you got to be not just competent. You got to be an expert shooter. And I mean, I was a sniper, and I did a lot of combat shooting, but I really leaned into it these past 4.5 years, and I think I found my groove with it. And so on the side, building out my shooting brand. I got something. I know anybody can go online and learn a thing or two, or there's no shortage of shooting instruction out there. But I got something that nobody's doing right now, and I'm gonna keep a lid on it until the time's right.
But how freeing is that to focus your? So I grew up shooting.
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have not shot since my shooting in July 10th, 2013, because the bang. So it's the post traumatic stress. It's the bang. I can't. Like I thinking about it gives me anxiety. And this comes from a guy who was a lifelong shooter, and I enjoyed shooting because I enjoyed the science behind it.
Right.
It's the breathing,
Yeah.
it's the focus.
Yeah.
You have to erase everything from your mind. So I admire people who still love that shooting, because I see that, and I've watched your videos on Instagram. And just give out your Instagram handle.
Shoot, eat, and lift. And if you take the first letter of each of those words, it spells out SEAL.
Shoot, eat, and lift.
And it's all the things I like to do, man.
And well, you don't look like you eat, because you look like you're still in pretty damn good shape. But I know the focus that it takes to shoot, because whatever noise is going on in your head from daily life, when you go out on a range, and this is what I always loved about the range or wherever you are, you're able just to make it disappear into the ether.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing it, because I watched your stuff and you got some cool shit on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some cooler shit to come, but for now, I mean, I've got access to a pretty good range. We've got access to some pretty good guns, and some good deals on ammo, and
which is a big deal right now.
Huge,
Yeah.
bro. I'm actually like, I'm always looking for a good deal on the ammo. The guns, it's like, I'll build out my gun when the time's right, but for now, I've got what I need, and at least to teach. And the thing is too, is like, I've had the experience of teaching guys for the past 4.5 years, and really, learning a lot. Even as an instructor, I feel like I learned more as an instructor than I did ever as just a student, which I'm always a student, but
yeah, but you see a different side of it.
for sure.
That's why I encourage young kids to coach.
Yeah.
Like in football.
Right.
So I encourage young kids to coach, because you're seeing the game from a different side, and it in turn makes you a better player.
For sure.
Yeah.
I totally get that. And I see that, like, so, and I learned from other guys. I mean, there's guys that I shoot with that are some of the fucking fastest shots and most accurate that I've ever seen, and they're legit. Actually, one of the guys that I ended up working with was the guy who taught me how to shoot in buds. And
that's cool.
Yeah. It was a cool, like, come full circle kind of moment. And he's definitely the fastest pistol shot I've ever met. And he's very unassuming looking. Like, you would never think that this guy could, put you down before you blink. And
well, I don't think your voice has raised an octave the entire time you've been here. Your smiles, you're very well spoken. You, on the surface, unless you sat there and I knew your story and told your story, you're one of the more unassuming people in the world. But here's what I know: the unassuming people are the ones you got to be careful of.
For sure.
It's not the dog that barks the loudest.
Oh yeah. And you see that all the time too. It's like, and I think, getting older helps, because you just, what is it? Like, the smarter you get, or the wiser you get, like, the more sad you are, because you're like, oh fuck. you start learning things. You're like, oh, it's like the smarter you get, it's like the more you see, the less you know. And I don't know. I've been known to howl at the moon with the boys, and just have my day of rage. But having kids settles you down, and being married and all that, you can't bring that shit home with you. But
now you have an opportunity now to teach guys and have them learn from a Navy SEAL, not just a Navy SEAL, from a guy who's probably got more experience in the Navy SEALs than, I'm going to guess, 99% of the people who went through.
Well, definitely the training. I mean, as a SEAL, like, I didn't get to, go to the Super Bowl or anything, but I got to play on the field with the team, and it was cool. Like, I mean, the guys that I worked with were the best. You know, my first platoon, all my older guys were like the hardest, coolest, most tactically sound dudes. Like I couldn't have asked for a better platoon to be a part of and just to learn from. And, you know, I still carry their lessons with me to this day. And, you know, so as far as being a SEAL, like, you know, I got to play a little bit, but you know, the training for sure, I could tell you, I could talk all day about it. And, you know, going through it, I never thought like, oh, this would be a cool podcast or a cool book one day. Like this, that was never like my mindset. It was like, this is just the hand I'm dealt and I've got to deal with it. You know, it's like, it's just the adventure, you know, this is the journey. This is the suffering, getting through this training and, you know, pushing through.
But look how much better you are on the other side.
And you know what? And that I would say, like, the rewards you reap for not quitting are, I mean, they're never ending, you know? I mean, I would not be where I'm at today. I would not be talking to you. I would not have what I have. I would not, you know, be who I am if I would have rang that bell, you know?
Well, you know, the greatest line, you mentioned Gladiator earlier on before Hell Week, and Maximus says something right before they're about to go into battle against the Germanic tribes, and he says, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And there is never a truer statement when it comes to John Collins than that statement right there, because what you have done in life is going to echo in eternity. And I can't wait to see where it goes.
Me either.
So, John, we are coming to the end of this thing here. And I end every show the same way because there's lessons in every hardship and every piece of suffering, 6 buds classes, multiple roles, medical issues, all these things to become what you've always felt that you must become in order to fulfill your life.
Who I am.
Who you are. It's had to have taught you something, all that suffering. And I'd love to know from you what your suffering has taught you.
You're stronger than you think. And it's diamonds are made from pressure, you know? I mean, you said it and it's true. You know, if it wasn't for the suffering, if it was easy, everybody would do it. You know, if it wasn't for the torture, if it wasn't for the pain, if it wasn't for the struggle, then, you know, everybody would be special. And yeah, sure, everybody's special, but there's a sign that hangs over the grinder that says, be someone special. So be that person, you know, and it's on you. And it's on you as the individual to not be a victim, to lean into the suffering, lean into the pain. Because look, you know, you got to choose your suffering. You got to choose your pain. You know, do you want the pain of regret and the pain of quitting and the pain of not fulfilling your destiny? Or do you want the pain of going through that and becoming something more and stronger on the other end?
Well, one leads to reward, the other one leads to regret. So that's pretty much it.
Well said.
So, John, I can't thank you enough. This has been wonderful. I love hearing these. I love finding out these little pieces of information from people on how to become a better person, on how to become a stronger person, on how to make your mind more bulletproof. I think you've done it. You've achieved that goal, and I can't wait to see what's next. And you got to keep us abreast at everything you do, because you are in here now. You are now family, and our platform is your platform.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you guys having me. I think what you're doing here is great. My condolences for your friend, and you know, keep doing what you're doing, bro. This is a great platform, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I got a story for him.
And I saw you, and I got to talk to this guy. So it's mutual.
Thanks, brother.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the suffering of a frogman with John Collins. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Don't take anything for granted. Never, ever have a plan B. You never really make it. Feel the pain to never feel it again. But most importantly, and this is John's life in a nutshell, losers make excuses. Winners find a way. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. And of course, follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, and of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. And we're going to see you on the next episode.